Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in Nigeria, where the Senate is considering a bill which seeks to ensure that a sitting president, vice president, governor, and deputy governor will not enjoy immunity in criminal matters. Arise News correspondent Abel Ajikeme reports that this is a part of constitutional amendment being proposed.
Reality if the alteration being proposed to the 1999 Constitution by the Senate sails through. It's already passed second reading. The bill, sponsored by Deputy President of the Senate, Ofio Omagege, proposes that immunity will be excluded from criminal liability where the offences involves misappropriation of funds. Another bill that aims to alter the country's constitution is proposing a higher national diploma as the minimum qualification for Nigerians seeking to be president or governors. The bill has also passed second reading. The ordinary national diploma will be the minimum qualification for those contesting for state and federal legislative seats. The current requirement is a school leaving certificate. The bill seeking to establish state police in Nigeria, sponsored by former Deputy President of the Senate, Ike Ekweremadu, also passed second reading. This comes less than a month after a bill on community policing passed for second reading. Other adopted bills on specifying the period within which the president or governor can present the appropriation bill, reducing the unlawful exclusion of a political party logo on the ballot paper, and replacing the name Nigeria Police Force with Nigeria Police. The bills have been referred to the Senate Committee on Constitutional Amendment for further legislative work. Abel Ejikeme, Arise News.
Your thoughts?
Well, I don't actually know where to start. In a way, I kind of feel like this is not necessarily a response, but this is also following on from last week's proposal, which did it go past second reading? I believe it went past first, with the Senate proposing immunity for senators, or at least certain members of the Senate and the National Assembly as a whole.
The House of Reps proposing immunity for principal officers of the National Assembly.
There we go. So I'm not necessarily surprised that a week later, this is a proposal that has come forward. However, I mean, there are pros and cons on both sides when we're talking about immunity for a president, a vice president, a governor, or a deputy governor. Is that something that we need in Nigeria right now? To an extent, I would actually say yes, because if we're looking at the fight against corruption, quite frankly, there are things that we cannot ignore. We cannot necessarily look at the situation and say all of the governors, all the deputy governors, all the vice presidents or presidents that we've had in this country can be free and clear from certain things. So, I mean, I kind of understand the proposal, but I also kind of feel like this is a follow-on from what we saw last week in the National Assembly. But what is your take?
I see it slightly differently. I think the House of Reps proposal is not going to be as popular as this one from the Senate. The House of Reps one is seeking to put the legislature on the same an even keel with the executive. The argument there is that why does the executive enjoy immunity and principal office of the legislature do not, when they're supposed to be co-equal arms of government? It's a logical argument, but is that really what we need in Nigeria now? Now, this Senate bill actually touches on what we do need in Nigeria. This attempt to whittle down Section 308 of the Constitution and remove the immunity from criminal prosecution, I think would be popular because a lot of us agree the gap between the executive and the general populace is huge. It's trying to narrow the gap and show that nobody is above the law in Nigeria at any point. If you are guilty of, because the bill specifies looting. That's very popular, that you can be arrested, prosecuted for looting. You can be prosecuted if you use thugs during elections. That's another part of the bill. That's also going to be popular. So for me, this is showing in many ways that the Senate is more in touch with the people than the House of Reps. What the House of Reps is proposing, while it makes sense, is not really cogent at this time. But it must be recalled that with every constitutional amendment, state houses of assembly have to also pass it. We need 24 states out of the 36 states of the Federation to support it before it's passed. But I see nothing wrong with that amendment to Section 308.
That's what I'm saying. I completely agree with you. I genuinely think that if we're looking at an anti-corruption war, especially in this administration, then this is actually quite in line with that, quite frankly. And that's what I was saying, that I feel like this is a follow-on from last week in the sense that last week's proposal that went through the House was not necessarily one that was popular. And I felt like maybe this was some sort of reaction to that from the Senate, looking at it and saying, let's see it from a different perspective and let's see it from a different view. Should the executive, in this sense, have this freedom, or should we bring them back down to the same level as other members of society? And I think that's a very good call.
And also the other proposed amendment that a governor or presidential, aspirant should have an HND as a minimum. We all saw what happened during the last presidential election petition tribunal with the whole fuss about certificates and what have you. And it brought to the fore the conversation about how low the educational requirements are to be president of Nigeria. You could not get your foot through the door to be CEO of a company with those qualifications. So we should expect more from our leadership. I'm in support of these amendments.
So am I. And also the last one that we saw on the videotape that was played by our correspondents with the amendments from Nigeria Police Force to Nigeria Police. I think that's also a very smart proposal by the Senate, simply because, quite frankly, lingo is important. It really is. And the use of the word force, it is suggestive in its own ways. And especially when we're talking about trying to have a more democratic constitution and more democratic means in the country, the lingo that we use is extremely important. So,
and Senator K. Kuremadu's state police bill as well, amendments as well. This is looking good.
It is.
I hope the state's houses of assembly don't let the side down.
24 out of 36. Let's see if we get it.
That's the minimum. Well, still in Nigeria, the former Emir of Kano, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, has instituted a suit before the Federal High Court in Abuja, seeking an order for his release from detention and confinement. Sanusi was taken to Awe in Nasarawa State, and he has been detained in an apartment in the town after he was dethroned by the Kano state government on Monday. He's praying the court for an order releasing him and restoring his rights to human dignity, personal liberty, freedom of association and movement in Nigeria apart from Kano State. The respondents are the Inspector General of Police, the Director General of the Department of State Service, the Attorney General of Kano State, and Attorney General of the Federation.
Can he be blamed? Absolutely not, at the end of the day, quite frankly. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of reports of recent as well of the people of Nasarawa saying that they want him to stay. But fact of the matter is, that's not the case. He is right. He is being deprived of his right to expression, right to free movement, right to liberty, dignity, etc. And quite frankly, I'm happy that he's making this move, because this cannot be done in this day and age. Like we said the other day on the show, we're in 2020, and this is still the way that we're going around processes. This is still the power play that we're seeing between our traditional rulers and our political elite. So, quite frankly, this is a good move from him. He's doing the right thing.
I think it's really, truly shocking. I mean, he was banished, and we just saw this battalion, this long motorcade that was sent to take him away. He was banished, and his legal team sent a letter giving a 24-hour ultimatum for his release, which was ignored because he's still in detention as we speak. And being detained for what? It is completely unacceptable. Now the people of Nasarawa want him to stay. It's his choice, or it ought to be his choice, if he decides to stay with them or move elsewhere. It's completely unacceptable. And the fact, once again, we have seen, we're still reeling from the Showore incident, the DSS overreaching once again. They're involved in this kind of completely messy situation. The police force as well is not looking very good at this point, because why are they being involved in this? Really, who is holding him? It is our security agencies. And one would think, with the level of insecurity in this country, the gargantuan challenges ahead of them, this is what they decide to use their time to do. He should be released immediately.
Thank you. I mean, for insubordination, the entire facade is just the biggest joke of the year so far, quite frankly. And I mean, it does raise a lot of questions, because things are becoming too repetitive. We sit down and we speak about the Nigeria police. We sit down and we speak about the DSS, the actions of these security agencies, and yet nothing seems to change. You're right, it is the security agencies that are holding him. And they do have to be called to order. So, I mean, he's doing the right thing by making sure that he makes that move to call them to order.
But he's gone to court. This is the thing. It should not even have come to that.
Thank you.
I think it's an absolute scandal, quite frankly. It goes to show that nobody is safe.
You're completely right, Tindo.
So we'll take a break at this point. Please stay with us for more on news headlines.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is our business correspondent, Rota Sodiri, for the latest headlines of today. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, ladies. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks. What's been going on yesterday, we saw massive sell downs in the global stock markets. It was just as bad yesterday, Thursday, as it was on Monday. Wherever you looked on the S&P 500 in the United States, in fact, it was a circuit breaker that was triggered yesterday. If the market falls by a certain threshold, 7% is one threshold, 13% is another threshold, 20% is another threshold. It'll shut down for a few minutes. So it shut down by it fell by 7% and will shut down for about 15 minutes. But if you look here, the FTSE 1, it's all red. I mean, look at that, red everywhere. FTSE 100 in London, the FTSE 250, the DAX in Germany, the Euro Stock 50, S&P 500, the Dow, the Nasdaq, the Nikkei in Asia. I mean, wherever you go, it was just like, even the Nigerian Stock Exchange, also very nasty as well. So global stock markets is still pretty ugly. And today is Friday the 13th. So we want to see how unlucky the markets are.
You know, someone said every day of 2020 has been Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, exactly. So we'll have to see how the markets react. But so that's the big story on the global end. But the bigger story in Nigeria was the central bank finally responding to the demand pressure that we've seen in foreign exchange with regards to the exchange rate. So market fundamentals do not support Naira devaluation at this time. This is a press release that the central bank sent out yesterday evening, and it's got everybody buzzing. We know that the central bank had the consultative forum, the Growth 2.0, earlier this week. Everybody was happy to hear the central bank governor finally address the issue of sliding oil prices. He promised that there would be a response from the central bank in terms of monetary and fiscal measures. And then you had your question yesterday with one of our guests where you were asking, okay, they haven't addressed the demand pressure yet. So this is now finally the central bank coming out and responding. And quickly read this here. The Central Bank of Nigeria wishes to note with displeasure the rumors and speculative activities of unscrupulous players in the foreign exchange market born out of the impression that the CBN is on the verge of devaluing the Naira and triggering panic in the FX market. These rumors are false, unwarranted, and calculated to serve their dubious and selfish ends. And they stated that they'll be working with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, the NFIU, and related agencies to uncover the unscrupulous persons and FX dealers who are creating this panic. So if you've tried to get dollars in the last couple of days, I was quoted at 375 on Tuesday, then it jumped to 380. I was quoted at 420 yesterday on Thursday. So we've seen a lot of demand pressure, which I think has been, some would say, as the CBN has put it, by speculators. Others would say saying expecting a devaluation or wanting to hold on to dollars. But on the other side of things, folks are saying, if the central bank is saying that market fundamentals do not support a devaluation, they've stopped and said, which fundamentals are you looking at? Because the same market fundamentals have led you to the government, that is, to try to plug a budget deficit. Budget deficit is when your expenditure exceeds your income. And so there's a hole of about 2 trillion naira, which they've had to borrow to fill up. And its fundamentals, which is, for folks who want to know, oil prices dropping and our FX income falling. So those fundamentals have led you to borrow more. Also, those same fundamentals, we heard from the Minister of Finance last week, saying that those same fundamentals have caused the Nigerian government to review the budget. The budget benchmark of $57 to bring it down because of oil, Russia and Saudi Arabia, oil prices are falling, and so those fundamentals are... So if those fundamentals are causing you to borrow, to plug your deficits, and causing you to review your benchmark, how come those fundamentals don't apply to you devaluing? So that's been the...
That's a very good question.
Yeah, that's been the question. So that's what's going on. But the CBN has come out. So we expect, with this circular from the CBN, I think the next logical step is then to supply dollars into the markets and bring the exchange rate back down to what it's been. That's what we expect.
4 years of regular stability, though, in the CBN. So, that is a bit of confidence to hold on to.
Which is why they're so wedded to this policy.
Yes, and of course, now, the 4 years of stability has come at an expense, which is, of course, the fact that the reserves were 45 billion July of last year. They've come down to about 36, 37.
But
so there's a cost.
The CBN is claiming it's enough. It's enough for the FX that we're getting in.
Right, so they're beating their chest and saying, we die here. We're going to maintain this exchange rates. We do not want speculators, causing panic in the markets, and we're going to respond. Well, but again, the question is, for how long can you maintain this, right? So but at least, but the thing is, though, the CBN has come out. They have addressed it, and so now we just wait to see what other measures are going to come forth.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rotos.
Thank you.
We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back with our sports analyst, Aaron Akirejala. Stay with us. provide a state of industrial development.
Actually have a...
So this is a need.
No matter how much they give you as a palliative,
You're watching Alive News.
we're sitting on the grid. And let's get to a video we all want to soccer finish.
And it's not funny. Yes, people may laugh.
Can I just be able to wipe this disease and get that former president?
The sound system.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is our sports analyst, Aaron Akerijola, for the latest headlines of today. Good morning, Aaron. How are you?
Good morning, Leila.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tindu. Looking lovely as ever.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, and moving, and quite some good news. We started off from the good news.
Is it Igalo?
Yes. Also
Yeah, even I know that.
Straight up.
Even
Bullseye.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and his scoring streak continues. For every time he gets to start, he finds the back of the net. Yesterday, he got the first goal, the icebreaker, the one that broke the metrics, all right, in the 5-0 thumping of LASK in the European League. And Ojo Judigallo has been quite a revelation. While they are still hailing Bruno Fernandes, who was the sign, the winter signing for Manchester United, everyone has been taken aback and stunned by what Ojo Judigallo has done for the team. And I'm sure Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will be sticking this one up to those who criticized the move, who criticized the player, and said this was a dud move because Ojo Judigallo has wowed people. If he starts, he scores.
Honestly,
Amazing.
he has, he has proven every single person that was skeptical about his move to Manchester United absolutely wrong. In 4 games, Igalo has scored 4 goals now, I believe, 2 in the first match, 1 in his second and 1 in this one now.
Yeah,
and really and
in
truly, he's bringing Manu up the exact same way Bruno Fernandes is. And I really think the Manu may give him a contract at the end of his 6 months, probably for 2 years though, because I mean he is also getting old. But I would love to see them give him a longer contract because
How old is
he is 30 now.
He's
30
30
31.
right now.
He's 30.
He's 30 right now, so he'll be expected. Hopefully, he gets a good contract. He's actually earned it. He might not be the starter. He might not be the marquee striker you're looking for, but certainly he's a good substitute. You want a super sub off the bench that can actually make an impact for you. And this Ojo Judigallo, I must say, who would have ever believed that in the twilight of your career that he will be having this much fortune?
Honestly, I really want to see how he plays with Rashford when he's back. I feel like they'd make a great team together.
I must actually tell you. But since we're talking about that, as we get closer to the weekend, it's getting more and more tighter. The pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, is beginning to permeate several places, even places that they are still living in oblivion, talking about the Premier League, because the Premier League have tried everything possible to ensure that they stay away from this. But when the news broke that Mikel Arteta, the coach of Arsenal, was down with coronavirus because probably he had contacts with the Olympiacos and Nottingham Forest owner, has actually thrown everything in jeopardy. The Premier League will be meeting today by 11:30 today to actually discuss whether or not to go on with the Premier League. They've been quite reluctant to actually stop the Premier League because
they have to.
No, but the point is, looking at it, because when Boris Johnson spoke, was it not yesterday when he spoke, he said sporting activities could go on. That
without the spectators.
Yes, no, he was even saying that from scientific point of view, it's having large crowds doesn't really...
Yes, but he's been criticized for his slower response to the virus.
No, because the point is...
You're not supposed to have large crowds at this time. It's just not worth it. Look at what the NBA has done.
You know what? All the reports from the UK that are coming out now, I'm sure you've seen them, say that it is literally said that the UK has at least 5,000 to 10,000 cases of coronavirus, and most of them are undetected because they have not gotten enough test kits around, and people are not getting tested, and they have it. At the end of the day, the entire Arsenal team has to go into quarantine now.
Yes.
Think about the amount of people the Arsenal team would have also been in contact with as well. Quite frankly, the Premier League at this point, I mean, they're also thinking of cancelling the Euros. The Premier League at this point probably does have to be cancelled before things get worse. You do not wait for the biggest outbreak to react.
I think so.
They are being they are being reluctant to do that because of the sheer economic value of the Premier League. Because when you look at it, if it brings in 3.3 billion per annum in terms of taxes alone, 7.7 billion is what the Premier League actually adds to the GDP of the UK. Certainly, they will be reluctant to do that. As a matter of fact, there's supposed to be a game between England and Italy by the end of the month. And the English FA are reluctant to chop that one off. And people are asking that, is that how much you guys love money that you would literally, everyone is actually trying to keep Italy at arm's length.
Yes.
Nobody wants to touch them with a 10-foot pole. But England, at the moment, England are still insisting that friendly game will go on. But let's see what happens. Later on today, they'll be having that particular meeting. And in terms of the Euros, also, they'll be having a meeting on Tuesday with all 55 nations that are supposed to be part of the Euros to determine whether the Euros will go on or not. But from the look of things, it's going to be difficult because, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard, but they would have to make that hard decision of calling the Premier League off.
I think they have to. At this point, I think there's some denial that goes on. Look at what the Japanese are doing with the Olympics. They're still in serious denial.
They came and they held their torch up. We're
now in a pandemic.
Because when you look at the monies that are being spent for the Olympics, to host the Olympics,
it's a hard decision.
It costs you at least $5.5 billion to host the Olympics.
But we're in a pandemic, so what can we do? It's most inconvenient, but what can one do at this point?
Exactly. Everything has been postponed at this point, and that's just the way things have to go.
Formula One should have started, but one of the members of the McLaren team tested positive to the coronavirus. So as it stands right now, the whole thing that's supposed to happen in Melbourne this weekend in Australia has been called off. It took a while. Like you said, they've been living in denial also. The Formula One management have always said that it will always go on. This particular race, the first race, the opener, will go on. But as it stands right now, as of this morning, it's been called off because several of the management or several of the owners of these constructions have actually met and said, this is not wise. Even though the Formula One management wanted to go on, but this is not a wise move. So that has been cut off also.
Thank you, Aaron.
Always a pleasure.